Marissa thought a cruel social media post would be nothing more than a joke, but for Tyler, it was the beginning of an obsession so dark it would end in blood and terror. Marissa never thought twice before posting on social media. She was known among her friends for her sharp humor, the kind that often cut too deep, but people loved it. That night, she was scrolling through her phone after a long day, sipping on a glass of wine, when she saw a photo of her ex-boyfriend Tyler at a party. The sight of him smiling triggered a sudden wave of irritation. Their breakup had been messy, and she still carried resentment for the way he treated her. Without considering the consequences, she typed out a short message, mocking him in the cruelest way she could think of. The words were meant to sting, and they did. In the middle of her insults, she included one line about his body that she knew would wound his pride the most. She wrote that he had a small penis. Within minutes, the post started gaining attention. Her friends commented with laughing emojis, strangers chimed in with jokes, and the feed quickly turned into a chain of ridicule aimed at Tyler. Marissa felt a rush of satisfaction, believing she had finally gotten the upper hand. She didn't delete it. She didn't feel guilty. She thought of it as a form of payback, nothing more than digital banter that would fade away in a day or two. But Tyler saw it almost immediately. The notification appeared on his phone while he was sitting at home, and his stomach dropped as he read her words. Humiliation spread like wildfire. He imagined his co-workers seeing it, his friends laughing behind his back, even strangers treating him differently because of it. The post was short, but it was cruel, and in a single moment, Tyler felt his pride, his image, and his control slip away. What Marissa thought was harmless mockery planted the seed of something far darker. Tyler couldn't escape the post. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the words glowing against the dark screen of his mind. The insult wasn't just about his body. To him, it was about power, respect, and the way others would see him from then on. At first, he tried to brush it off, telling himself that people would forget soon, but he couldn't resist checking. Each time he opened his phone, more likes and comments had piled up, each one a reminder of how public his humiliation had become. The laughter he imagined from others felt louder than anything in his real life. Sleep became rare. He stayed awake into the early hours of the morning, scrolling through her profile, reading every reply under her post, and obsessively noting who had interacted with it. He noticed the people they both knew who had clicked the laughing emoji, and he memorized each name. He took screenshots of the post, the comments, and even her photos, creating a secret folder filled with evidence of what she had done to him. Every detail felt like fuel on a fire that was burning out of control. What might have been just a cruel joke to her turned into an endless cycle for him. He stopped focusing at work, often staring at his computer screen without doing a single task. When friends tried to talk to him, he nodded along but barely heard them. His thoughts always drifted back to Marissa and what she had said. He convinced himself that she had destroyed his reputation, that she had taken something from him that could never be restored. The obsession didn't fade with time. It grew heavier, shaping every action and thought until it consumed him completely. Marissa started noticing small things that felt off, but she didn't connect them right away. One afternoon, when she came out of a grocery store, she found a long scratch etched into the side of her car. It was deep, deliberate, not the kind of scrape from a careless driver. She felt annoyed, thinking it was just random vandalism, and brushed it aside. A few days later, messages from anonymous accounts began to arrive in her inbox. Some were vague, filled with threats about how she would pay for what she had done. Others were darker, suggesting she should watch her back. She blocked the accounts, assuming it was just internet trolls trying to scare her. At night, however, the feeling of being watched became harder to ignore. Neighbors mentioned seeing someone standing across the street from her house at odd hours, a shadowy figure lingering under a street lamp. Once, her dog barked furiously in the middle of the night, growling at the window as if someone was just outside. Marissa told herself it was nothing, maybe a teenager wandering around or a stray animal. She didn't want to believe it could be more than that. Still, small details piled up. Items on her porch seemed to move, as though someone had been there. She noticed footprints in the snow one morning that led right up to her door, but didn't continue in any direction. She tried to laugh it off with friends, insisting she wasn't scared, but deep down she felt uneasy. The thought of Tyler crossed her mind more than once, yet she quickly dismissed it. She convinced herself he wouldn't risk doing anything reckless. What she didn't realize was that these signs were not coincidences. They were warnings of something building just beyond her sight. The night of the attack began like any other for Marissa. She stayed late at work, finishing tasks long after most of her coworkers had gone home. By the time she walked out, the building was quiet and the parking lot nearly empty. The air was cold, and the street lamps cast long shadows that stretched across the cracked pavement. She clutched her keys tightly, the way she always did when walking alone at night. But she told herself there was nothing to fear. As she approached her car, the silence felt heavier than usual. She thought she heard footsteps, soft but deliberate, echoing behind her. She turned quickly, scanning the lot, but saw nothing except rows of empty vehicles. Shaking it off, she unlocked her car and reached for the handle. That was when a figure burst out from the darkness. The attack came fast and violent. A gloved hand yanked her backward before she could scream. She struggled, clawing at the mask covering the attacker's face, but the voice that slipped out left no doubt in her mind. It was Tyler. Months of rage and obsession exploded in that instant, every ounce of his humiliation fueling his blows. He shoved her to the ground, his weight crushing her, the sound of her body striking the asphalt echoing through the lot. She tried to fight back, kicking and twisting, but the attack was relentless. Her vision blurred as the world spun around her, and her screams finally pierced the silence. A passerby in the distance shouted, their footsteps rushing closer. Tyler panicked, striking her one last time before fleeing into the shadows. By the time help reached her, Marissa was unconscious, bloodied and broken, her body a grim testament to the violence she had just endured. The investigation began almost immediately after Marissa was rushed to the hospital. Detectives knew from the brutality of the assault that it was personal. Nothing had been stolen. Her purse, phone, and jewelry were untouched. This wasn't a random attack. It was fueled by anger. Tyler's name surfaced almost instantly, whispered by friends who recalled the online post and the bitter breakup. When police first questioned him, he denied everything. He said he had been at home all evening, watching television, and claimed he hadn't spoken to Marissa in months. But cracks began to form in his story. Investigators pulled surveillance footage from businesses near the parking lot. On one grainy clip, a car resembling Tyler's circled the area repeatedly in the hour before the attack. Another camera captured a man wearing dark clothing walking away from the lot at the exact time Marissa's screams were reported. The figure's build and gait matched Tyler's. Detectives then searched his home. In his trash, they found a pair of gloves stained with what looked like blood. Forensic testing confirmed it belonged to Marissa. Even more unsettling was the discovery of a notebook hidden in his bedroom drawer. Its pages were filled with angry scrawls, entries that read like rants against Marissa. Some detailed her daily routines, the places she visited, even notes about when she was most often alone. The writings revealed a disturbing level of obsession, turning what had once seemed like an impulsive outburst into a carefully monitored fixation. The evidence grew undeniable. Tyler's alibi collapsed when his phone records showed he had been near Marissa's workplace at the exact time of the attack. Piece by piece, investigators built their case, transforming suspicion into certainty that this was not a random crime. It was a planned act of revenge. When Tyler's trial began, the courtroom was filled with tension. The case had drawn attention far beyond the small town, with reporters lining the steps outside and locals crowding the gallery inside. Everyone wanted to understand how a single social media post could spiral into such violence. The prosecution wasted no time laying out their case. They showed the jury the gloves found in Tyler's trash, the surveillance footage of his car circling the parking lot, and the disturbing notebook filled with his angry writings. Each piece of evidence painted a clear picture of premeditation, not a momentary lapse of control. The defense attempted to spin a different story. They admitted Tyler had been humiliated but argued he acted in a sudden, uncontrollable burst of passion. They described him as a man pushed beyond his limits by public ridicule, someone who snapped under the weight of embarrassment. They urged the jury to see him not as a monster, but as a man who made a tragic mistake. Yet their argument faltered when confronted with the months of stalking, the documented threats, and the obsessive behavior detailed in the notebook. This wasn't a single night of weakness. It was a slow build of anger that Tyler nurtured until it exploded. Witnesses testified to the fear Marissa had experienced in the weeks leading up to the attack. Neighbors recalled the figure lurking outside her home, and coworkers described her growing unease. Experts explained how humiliation can fuel obsession, but they also highlighted the clear planning Tyler demonstrated. The jury listened, silent and grim. When deliberations ended, the verdict was unanimous. Tyler was found guilty on all major counts, including attempted murder and aggravated assault. The judge's words sealed his fate, decades behind bars for a crime born out of pride and vengeance. Marissa survived the attack, but her life was divided into two parts, before that night and after. Her injuries slowly healed, yet the scars remained as permanent reminders of what she had endured. Simple routines became complicated. She no longer felt safe walking alone to her car, even in broad daylight. Every creak of her house at night made her heart race, and she often found herself checking the locks on her doors and windows multiple times before bed. The physical wounds faded, but the invisible ones lingered in ways she hadn't expected. The community, too, was shaken. People who once thought of online insults as harmless suddenly saw them in a different light. Conversations spread through coffee shops, workplaces, and schools about how words on the internet could spark real-life violence. Parents warned their children to think twice before posting, and many young people in town deactivated their accounts altogether. The case became a cautionary tale, retold with a mix of fear and disbelief. Meanwhile, Tyler was sentenced to decades in prison. He showed little remorse during the trial, and in the end, his pride had cost him his freedom. For Marissa, however, knowing he was behind bars brought only partial relief. The memory of his face, the sound of his voice that night, and the feeling of being hunted lingered in her mind. Freedom did not mean peace. She tried to rebuild by leaning on her friends and family, slowly reclaiming parts of her old life. Yet she moved with a new sense of caution, as though the world itself had become sharper, more dangerous. The attack left her with an unshakable truth. What begins with a single cruel sentence online can escalate into violence that changes lives forever.